Do you remember when a polo shirt actually felt like a real piece of clothing? Not paper-thin fabric, not collars curling after 2 washes, not shirts that somehow look exhausted before summer even ends. I'm talking about the kind of polo shirts men wore in the 1980s and 1990s. The kind with thick cotton, strong collars, heavy stitching. Shirts that softened over time instead of falling apart. Because, honestly, a lot of men over 50 quietly feel the same frustration today. Modern clothing got more expensive, while somehow becoming cheaper at the exact same time. And nowhere is that more obvious than polo shirts. I walked through a mall recently here in America and picked up a polo from one of those modern luxury casual stores. $110. And when I touched the fabric, I honestly thought, this feels worse than shirts people wore mowing lawns in 1987. The material felt thin, the collar already looked weak, and the entire thing had that strange, fast fashion softness that disappears after 3 washes. And maybe I'm old-fashioned, but if I'm paying over $100 for a shirt, I don't want it feeling disposable before I even leave the store. And if you read reviews online from older men, you start noticing the exact same complaints over and over again. One man wrote, "Everything feels cheaply made now, even the expensive brands." Another said, "I still own polos from the 90s that look newer than shirts I bought last year." And honestly, I believe him. Because older Americans remember what clothing used to feel like. Back then, shopping was slower. Stores felt calmer. Employees actually talked to customers. Department stores smelled like cologne and fresh cotton instead of shipping plastic. And companies still understood something important. If you made quality products, people stayed loyal for decades. Today, most companies seem obsessed with lowering fabric costs, speeding up production, chasing trends, and hoping customers keep replacing clothes constantly. And honestly, I think a lot of men over 50 are tired of it. Tired of buying shirts that wrinkle, immediately lose shape, fade too quickly, stretch awkwardly, or start pilling after a few washes. Because mature men stop shopping emotionally. At 25, people buy clothing because it looks exciting. At 60, people buy clothing because they're tired of disappointment. And honestly, that may be wisdom. So today I want to talk about 3 polo shirt brands that still remind many older men of how clothes used to feel. Not perfect brands, not cheap brands, but brands that many mature American men still believe are worth the money. And before we continue, if you enjoy honest conversations about timeless menswear, trusted brands, shopping after 50, and products that still deserve respect, follow George and Nora Recommend. We talk about old-school quality products that quietly got worse timeless style, and the brands older Americans still trust after all these years. Now, the first brand I still think gets it right is Ralph Lauren. Now, let's be honest here. Ralph Lauren became expensive, very expensive. But one reason older men continue buying these polos is because the brand largely protected its identity while many others completely collapsed into fast fashion. And mature men notice that immediately. Because once you've worn truly good clothing, bad quality becomes impossible to ignore. You start noticing weak collars, thin cotton, cheap stitching, twisted seams, loose buttons, fabric that loses shape by August. Meanwhile, many older men say Ralph Lauren polos still feel structured, masculine, substantial, and timeless. One reviewer online wrote, "My newer mall brand polos feel like disposable napkins compared to my old Ralph Lauren shirts." Another man said, "The collar alone tells you the difference." And honestly, he's right. The collar matters. Cheap collars instantly age a man visually, especially after 50. A weak, floppy collar somehow makes even expensive clothing look tired. And many mature men say Ralph Lauren polos still maintain shape, structure, and that classic American look that never really goes out of style. Because after a certain age, men stop wanting to look trendy. They want to look clean, sharp, relaxed, and quietly confident. That's very different. And honestly, timeless style usually ages better than trendy fashion anyway. The second brand many older American men still swear by is Brooks Brothers. Now this brand carries enormous nostalgia for older Americans. especially men who remember downtown department stores, office culture, shopping before the internet, and a time when dressing well still felt connected to adulthood. Brooks Brothers represents an older America, a slower America, a version of shopping where stores actually wanted long-term customers instead of impulse buyers. And if you read reviews from mature men online, one word appears constantly: substantial. That word matters because modern clothing often feels strangely empty now. One reviewer wrote, "Most modern polos feel like stretchy gym shirts pretending to be menswear." Honestly, that's painfully accurate. Another man said, "When I buy Brooks Brothers, I still feel like I'm buying real clothing." And mature men know exactly what that means. Real cotton, proper collars, weight in the fabric, shirts that drape correctly instead of clinging awkwardly. Many older men online also talk about how modern clothing feels overly synthetic now. Too stretchy, too shiny, too soft in a fake way. Meanwhile, Brooks Brothers polos still tend to feel breathable, classic, sturdy, and intentionally designed. One older man wrote something that made me laugh. "I'm too old to spend $90 on a shirt that feels like pajamas from Costco." And honestly, he's not wrong. A lot of expensive modern polos lost that masculine structure they used to have. The third brand I still think deserves respect is Lacoste. Now, I know some people watching may disagree with this one, because yes, Lacoste became very fashion-focused over the years. But honestly, when you find the right Lacoste polos, many of them still outperform most modern mall brands by a mile, especially when it comes to fabric texture, color, durability, structure, and shape retention. And if you read reviews online, older men constantly mention something interesting about Lacoste polos. They say the shirts feel intentional. That's actually a perfect word for it. Intentional. Because mature adults notice when products feel thoughtfully made. One reviewer wrote, "My old Lacoste polos aged better than shirts half their age." Another said, "Still one of the few brands where the collar survives." And honestly, that collar issue keeps appearing everywhere in menswear discussions now, because cheap collars destroy the entire shirt visually, especially on mature men. A collapsing collar, wrinkled sleeves, thin fabric, loose stitching, all of it quietly makes a man look older, more tired, and less put together. And maybe that's why older men become more selective with clothing over time, because after enough years, people stop chasing hype. They stop buying giant logos. They stop dressing for strangers. They stop caring what social media says is fashionable this month. Instead, they start appreciating comfort, quality, reliability, durability, and products that still respect the customer. And honestly, maybe that's one of the better parts of aging. You finally learn the difference between things designed to impress people temporarily and things designed to quietly serve you well for years. And maybe that's why so many older Americans become emotional talking about stores from the 1980s and 1990s. Because it wasn't just the clothing, it was the experience. Stores felt calmer, people talked more. Salesmen actually helped you. Department stores felt elegant. And clothing companies still acted like long-term trust mattered. Today, everything feels rushed, disposable, overly online, and strangely impersonal. Even shopping became exhausting. Reading endless reviews, comparing fabric percentages, wondering if something survives the washing machine, paying premium prices for disappointing quality. Older generations remember when shopping didn't feel this complicated. And honestly, I think many younger people don't even realize what disappeared because they never experienced the older version. But the people who did experience it remember immediately. They remember thicker cotton, heavier fabrics, stronger collars, better stitching, and shirts that softened beautifully with age instead of collapsing after one season. And maybe that's why these conversations matter. Because nostalgia is not always about missing the past. Sometimes it's about recognizing what quietly disappeared while nobody was paying attention. So now I'd genuinely love to hear from you. Which polo shirt brands do you still trust today? And which brands completely disappointed you over the years? Leave your thoughts in the comments because honestly, Older Americans often leave the best product advice anywhere on the internet. And if you enjoyed this conversation, follow George and Nora Recommend for more honest discussions about timeless menswear, trusted American brands, shopping after 50 old-school quality, and the products that still deserve your money. And remember, sometimes the best things aren't the newest things. They're the things that still feel the way they did before everything became disposable.